Hello everyone, and welcome to Speaking Overseas' brand new YouTube channel. Here, the SOS crew has decided that we're going to post vlogs and first-hand accounts of people's interactions and use of the apps while traveling overseas. Our first account comes to us from a man named Andrew, who is traveling back from his overseas trip to Japan. On his way back, he noticed the person sitting next to him was struggling to speak to the flight attendant when asking for assistance. Turns out that person did not speak English or Japanese, so the flight attendant could not understand him. But luckily, Andrew had his phone with him, paid for in-flight Wi-Fi and everything, and he decided that he'd be a good Samaritan and help him out. Using the app's fresh translation feature, he was able to help translate the guy who could only speak German into both English and Japanese so the flight attendant could help. Now, this is just one of many ways that the app helps people abroad. This one is language-based, and it's free translation service on the go. It allows people to translate hundreds of languages to the language they need simply by speaking or typing into the app. It is a very useful feature and helps many people when traveling abroad. And to get into our next account, we're going to look at Sabrina's story as she was traveling abroad in Switzerland. Now, as many people know, most people in Switzerland are able to speak English to some extent, and Sabrina was aware of this for her travels, but she was also aware that there are select people in the countries that cannot speak English. And so, before her travel, she decided to take out the SOS app and do one of our free lessons. Using those lessons, she was able to learn multiple very important phrases she might need on her trip abroad. And little did she know, she would come into an interaction where she met with a waiter at a restaurant that could not speak English. But because she was prepared from her training the weeks prior to her trip, she was able to perfectly order everything she needed, and as well as thank and appreciate the waiter's help. Our next account comes to us from Taylor, who was planning a trip to Paris and used the SOS app to help her better understand the French culture before she got there. So, as many people know, in both Paris and France culture as a whole, fashion is held very highly and very importantly. Of course, Sabrina was not quite aware of this, but before she took her travel to Paris, she decided to take one of the free culture lessons that SOS offers on France. So she learned that she might need some slightly higher end clothes when traveling to France to better fit in with the community as a whole. So before her trip, she decided to go out and buy some slightly higher end clothes for not too much more of an expense and be better prepared for her trip. And this is just another way that SOS helps people both with language and culture for their travels abroad. Now, our last story comes to us from Armond, a Frenchman who was planning a vacation in Australia for the summer. Now, Armand had studied English throughout his life, but he had only studied British English, so he wanted to understand the differences that British and Australian Englishes had. And so Armand was able to, before his trip, take a lesson using SOS that taught him about Australian dialect and Australian culture. Now, this is one important distinction that I think SOS has over many other places, that SOS is able to teach both individual and separate languages, but also dialects within the languages themselves. Now, SOS doesn't offer this in very many languages, our most popular ones being English and Japanese, as they have some pretty extreme dialects within them, but it is very important to understand that learning a language isn't always about learning a different language. You can still learn a language that is a language you may already know, but with different dialects, it is imperative to understand how what someone might say in Australia could be wildly different than what someone might understand in America. And so that will conclude our first vlog, and we really hope you enjoyed, and see you guys next time.